So, between late nights, family visits, road trips, and all the snacks, toddlers turn into little wild cards during the holidays. Their eating changes, their routines melt, and parents start asking, is it okay? Should I worry? Well, moms and dads, welcome back to Lights Camera Baby. I'm Progeny, and today we're getting real about holiday eating and toddler growth. Now, because this season can feel chaotic, as we all know, and knowing what's normal will help us all breathe a little bit easier. To guide us through this, I'm delighted to be joined by pediatric dietitian and feeding expert Nathalie Mat. Now, Nathalie's incredible at helping families understand food, behavior, and the emotional side of feeding. So, Nathalie, welcome to Lights Camera Baby today.
Wow, thank you so much.
Wonderful. So let's start where parents worry the most, right? When the holidays roll in, I mean, toddlers' appetites changes. I suppose the routines all change, and some eat less, some eat more, others snack nonstop, depending on what kind of eater you have in your household. So what's actually happening here? Let's dial this down.
You mentioned something really important, and that is routines are different.
Yeah.
And we don't need to be little robots.
Mhm.
We don't need to eat the exact same thing every single day. But I would look at your daughter or your son's usual pattern
Mhm.
and try to emulate that at least a little. So
Okay.
once they've woken up, give them a breakfast. And then the kind of pattern that they would have in the day ordinarily, you would like to gently pulse that again. And so, as much as children, especially below the age of 3, children are very good at knowing when they're hungry or not. But as parents, it is still our role to provide a regular meal structure. And so, even though you have children who kind of don't like too much fuss or all the different eating personalities that there are, you do still want to ideally pulse a regular pattern because that helps children to pay close attention to how am I feeling? Am I hungry? Am I actually thirsty? That type of thing. And so that gentle pulse to the day is one of the cornerstones that I would encourage parents to really focus on.
Okay. Now, is it normal if my toddler barely eats on holiday?
It depends. So I find that when we have an infant, this is a young human who is growing at incredibly rapid pace. And as soon as children start getting a bit of independence, their eating, their interest in the world changes dramatically. And so I find sometimes their eating for the week is a helpful way to kind of console yourself if you're worried about how your child is eating. So
Okay.
it is important that you allow your child to say no if they have had enough to eat.
Right.
But Natalie, how do I know if my child is eating enough?
Yeah.
Well, they might be getting sick, which might be suppressing their appetite. They could be constipated, especially if they're not drinking as much water as usual. So there are some things we want to first tick off the list. Is this child sick? Is this child maybe not going to the toilet? Because you can imagine if you've got a tummy full of stuff, you're not going to be so hungry. But otherwise, if this is a child that otherwise is in a good mood, they're playing around, they're exploring, trust that they know how much they eat. Because you might find that they get to the point where they will just consume a whole lot. And so in general, during the holidays, you're out of your usual rhythm and routine. And so you might find that this child is kind of eating a little bit less, but they will almost always catch up. If it continues for more than a few days, that's a worry sign.
Yes.
Where is this kid actually getting all the energy to play from? But in general, trust your child to eat as much as they need, offer them regular food, and I would avoid offering the same food. You didn't finish your breakfast. Here is the rest of your breakfast. You didn't finish your breakfast at lunchtime. Here is your. Don't offer the same food. You can repackage it slightly differently if that's possible, but offer your children a balanced variety of foods across the day as they would ordinarily get.
Okay. And do you notice that some children eat well at home, but then obviously, and I mean, when you're traveling, they don't eat so well, right? And then you go into panic mode again, right?
So, with children, how much they eat is not only a function of their growth and their needs, but it can also be part of their body autonomy and part of feeling safe. So
Okay.
if you have a child who is very particular about textures or flavors, and you're going somewhere where suddenly everything looks new, if your
Ah.
child perceives that new food as quite scary, that
Mm.
fear gets in the way of them connecting with their real appetite. And so if everything is new, if everything looks completely different, your child might go, and it's not that they're being fussy eaters, it's that this is a scary food. I don't know it, I don't recognize it. And so making sure that you do have familiar foods with you can be very, very helpful. The other thing that can be going on is as we are traveling, I might have less autonomy over my body than I ordinarily do. And
Okay.
so a child might take back some control by expressing autonomy over what they do or don't eat, because
Right.
they have a very limited area of autonomy. I can decide whether or not I eat, and I can decide whether or not I go to the loo. Like, that is it. Where I sleep, who's around me,
That's
those a
true.
child doesn't have control over. And so this is sometimes one of the ways that a child will express bodily autonomy when there's a lot of chaos around them. So regular structure, but then also making sure that regular foods are available, and also check that the feeding environment isn't super stressful.
Okay.
So that's when the environment is new. I
Yes.
actually often find reports from parents saying that my child eats better at school than they do at home. And so at school, there's a bit of peer pressure, there's a lunch that's being served that you maybe didn't make. And often that peer pressure and everyone else is doing it can make it a little bit easier.
Uh-huh.
Also, keep in mind you are your child's safe space. So
Mm-hmm.
they can say, I don't like it, or it's this, or it's that. And they know you're not going to say anything negative. You are their safe space. And what I would encourage parents to do is to put down food in front of their child, let their child eat as much as they want,
Mm-hmm.
and not comment on finishing the plate. And I
That's so hard.
know in the context of food insecurity and not wanting to
Mm.
waste, that can be incredibly hard. I know my parents made me finish everything that was on my plate. But if you want to raise a competent eater, let your child tell you when they have had enough to eat rather than being bullied by you. This also affirms, it really helps a child learn. If you go, I trust you
Mm-hmm.
to tell me when your tummy is full, if they didn't eat enough, they'll get hungry again sooner. They know it's up to
Mm.
them. And so by helping a child learn to connect to their appetite, you're teaching them to be adults who can tell when they're hungry or full.
So, do you think these changes in appetite during the holidays should be a concern, or when should we be concerned about it as parents?
If your child suddenly stops eating or drinking altogether, like that is a big red flag.
Mm-hmm.
If your child also cannot stop eating, that is a red flag. So any extremes are something that I would encourage you to look out for. You want to make sure that when your child, if they're still wearing nappies, they have a light straw colored urine. We don't want it super dark that says they're not getting enough. We want to make sure that they're having stools regularly. And the World Health Organization says that anywhere between 3 a week and 3 a day is normal.
Okay.
And so if your child is getting sick, there might be changes there. And then obviously their eating is impacted. I'm sure you know when you're sick, you might not feel like
That's true.
eating. And I found there's an unbelievable, I don't know why, but this year there are so many germs about. Everyone is sick at the moment. And
That's
so
so
you
true.
can use that as a flag. Is there something else going on? Are they pulling at their ears? Are they more stuffy than usual? Do
Mm-hmm.
they have a temperature? And then if your child is eating non-stop, this makes me think of two questions. The first one is, have I been starving my kid? So when children go through growth spurts, they will be eating.
Right.
Their mood might change. They might be a lot sleepier than normal as they're kind of going through a growth spurt. So especially if your child is eating like dinner or lunch portions and eating a lot, that might mean that they're going through a growth spurt. It also makes me wonder, do they not have enough access to food for the rest of the time that suddenly they're going bananas.
Yes.
And so you want to look at any extreme and go, like,
Mm.
I wonder what's going on here, because behavior, how your child is behaving, is information that can tell you something that maybe they don't have the words for yet.
Right.
And I find in households where maybe parents are very strict about sweeties or biscuits or chippies,
Mm-hmm.
that those children often don't know how much is too much because they don't have regular access to it. And
Aha.
so if you as a parent give your child who normally does not get sweeties and you hand them a little packet and that kid polishes the packet and you're like, whoa, and they keep asking for more and more and more, it might be that this is a child who hasn't learned to eat sweet stuff regularly or eat chippies or biscuits
Yes.
regularly. And so they think it is a really, really special food.
So they binge.
Yeah, because they've never had this delicious thing that like spikes the
Makes a lot of
feel-good
sense.
hormones in their brain, which is a normal response.
Yeah. Do you notice that during holidays that growth spurts slow down? Does that?
This is a very interesting one because kids experience growth spurts at different time, and seasonally we do tend to see a bit more growth during spring. And so if holidays are around springtime, yes, absolutely. Also, I think if you think of how busy a week is, you might find that children are actually so busy running around and playing and they're not finishing their lunch boxes and la 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 la. Time with family, children often have developmental like spurts. They might have a bit of a growth spurt, and especially if your child is on medication during the school term and then off medication during the holidays, you would see significant growth. We don't want to see a child who is not growing at all across a long period. But I do think we must keep in mind that growth happens in spurts. It doesn't tend to be like 0.2 millimeters a day. It happens in these bursts.
Okay, got you. Now let's get to that big pressure point, holiday food, right? Treats and sugar without the stress we'd like, of course. But parents want to enjoy the holidays, but the sugar and the snacks and the desserts, it's a lot, right? It's all there. And we all want to be festive and we all want to be inclusive. And so how do we manage it without turning into a food fight? Because, sometimes we restrict these things in the year and we want them to follow a steady pattern and we don't want to overload. But wherever you go and you're invited to all these things and you go out so often, there's just a sugar overload. There's just a treat overload, right?
This is such an interesting question, and nobody likes my answer. My answer is that I would like parents to model what they feel is a healthy relationship with food.
Okay.
So if you want to be a household that has sweeties or cool drinks or things like that, show your children how to eat these foods, ideally in the context of a meal. Okay, you would like to drink a fizzy drink, we'll have it with lunch. Why don't we have it in between meals? Oh, because it coats our teeth and then it can increase our likelihood of getting cavities. So having sweet stuff in the context of a meal, putting stuff in the context of a day. Remember I said parents provide the healthy meal structure. We don't want to have a pastry for breakfast and waffles for lunch and milkshakes for dinner. We do want some growing food in there as well. And I also think how we talk about food is very important. If I say something is good, then we want to have it and like have the little health halo. And if I say something is bad, then we want to avoid it. And especially for a young kid, if I eat a bad food and I enjoy it, am I a bad person?
No.
No.
I hope not.
And so instead of referring to things, even the word treat, which as adults we use a lot, I would term for children, and it's still a dichotomy. Like I don't want to pretend it isn't, but I like using fun foods and everyday or growing foods. And the reason for this is if I call it a fun food, I'm not denying the fact that it's fun. Like we eat these foods at parties, they are delicious and they taste nice and they make us feel good and they lift our mood, but they're also not growing foods or everyday foods.
Yes.
And so we need to have that balance. And during the holiday, having a fun food a day is absolutely fine, but we can't have a fun food at every meal and in between meals. And sometimes having that conversation, if your child says, I would like a dot, 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 if you just say, no, you have had enough, that is taking away from the child their ability to have enough as they deem necessary. And if we rather say, I know you feel like biscuits for breakfast, that's not really breakfast food. Let's have your normal breakfast, and at lunchtime we can have some afterwards, or maybe at dinner time we can have whatever else there is in the house, to create the context like you're allowed to want that food.
Yes.
And it's normal to like that food. We don't eat it at breakfast time. Maybe we'll have some in the context of another meal or another activity. And sometimes you can also put it in terms of, we're all going out to Granny's house later and she has the best cake or dessert or whatever it is. So let's save our fun stuff for then. Creating that context of balance and putting things across a whole day so that your children can see you're not being a meanie. You're acknowledging how nice it is to eat that food, but this is what the plan is for today, and that's when we can eat that kind of stuff.
Now, as a parent, how do we try to balance and monitor the sugar over the holidays? Because as I've done my research over the years, it's in everything. I mean, very often you think, oh, but I don't give my children sugar in their tea, or I don't put added sugar to anything, I don't have sugar, they don't have sugar. But once you start looking at the food labels, it's in everything.
It is.
So how do you balance that as a parent?
The World Health Organization recommends that we try to limit our sugar intake, added sugar intake, to 6 teaspoons or less, roughly 25 grams a day.
Okay.
And the easiest way to get in sugar is to drink it. So I would highly encourage parents to limit the amount of juice and sugar-sweetened beverages that they're giving their children, because that is just a recipe for cavities. It can be a weekend thing or a once-in-a-while thing, but I would say try not to start that habit, simply because it is a very easy way to get sugar in. Then the moment you look at a yogurt label or a cereal label, there is quite a lot of added sugars in those. And I don't think we should demonize these foods. They can absolutely form part of a balanced diet. We want to check how often they are coming in. And so if your child is having a sweetened dairy drink and they're having a sweet cereal, then maybe they don't need a little pack of gummies as well. But if most of their food is unsweetened, they had oats at breakfast time, or they had some other cereal at breakfast time, or a fruit-based smoothie, the sugar in fruit does not count towards those 6 teaspoons. The moment you're making it fruit juice, the moment you're making it those like little strings or shapes made out of fruit, that counts. But whole food, the milk sugars, fruit sugars, they don't count towards those 6 grams. It's the stuff that you are getting as sweets, as biscuits, as cool drinks. It's the stuff you're adding to hot chocolate. That is the stuff that counts. And there again, it's about balance. And so consider what your child regularly eats in a day and make a decision around how much extra sweet stuff you add around that. There as well, to be honest, holidays, you want to have some fun. They want to have some fun. I wouldn't be pedantic about it, but be cognizant as the parent, it's your role to check the overall food. And so if your gut feeling is like, oh, it's a little bit high, then maybe start offering more watermelon at snack times instead of the other sweet things. Do I have fresh fruit? Can we blend a smoothie into a popsicle instead of always reaching for whatever lollipop type thing that you've got?
Yeah, that makes so much sense, because you can become pedantic about it. But I like the fact that you are breaking it down, allowing us to make it part of our daily lives, just be able to add it on and offer the alternatives, or the timing of when you add it on. Again, it allows for the growing foods to be consumed. And very often, I'm assuming, well, I think that I've seen it as well with the kids. Once you give them a meal, their appetite for that biscuit sweet, something, ice cream after that decreases. So they can have it, but they won't be able to have as much, right?
Absolutely. And so if you think of when you're hungry, let's say you let yourself get over hungry for whatever reason, in that moment where your blood sugar is low, your body will tell you, like, you don't want a chickpea salad. You want the thing that is going to fill you up as quickly as possible. And kids are burning calories so fast, they might not be able to say, like, oh, I have the first signs of hunger. They might only be able to go, I'm hungry, when they're really hungry. And in that moment, the sweet or the biscuit, or like, that is the thing that their body is saying, that has a lot of energy and that will pick it up for you. And so giving kids a full meal helps to satisfy their hunger. And if you still include a little piece of chocolate or something like that in the meal, what I have found is if you, with younger children, include a piece of chocolate or whatever dessert is on their plate so that as they sit down, they can see, this is my food. What often happens is they might take a bite of the dessert, but then put it down and eat the other things, because their inherent knowledge, their connection to self and knowing what they need is there. And also, if we have not said, this thing on the corner of your plate is really desirable, and as an adult, we will limit your access to it, your child doesn't know that's a special thing. It's just food.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. We make it a big deal.
Because we limit how much we eat. But if you make it a very neutral thing for your children, they'll have a very balanced relationship with food. And then they're less easy to bribe with food.
So, to reiterate that, then, if I had to say, is it okay to let toddlers have daily treats during December?
In the context of their total diet, yes. So if your child is getting a lot of sugar from everything they're eating as growing food or everyday food, go super lightly on the amount of added sugar you're putting in. But if you have a child who doesn't eat a whole lot of sugary stuff, they're not getting jam on their toast, they're not eating a sweetened yogurt, they're not eating little fruit juby type things, that child absolutely has room in their diet for extra sweet stuff. And if we put food on a pedestal, our children will understand that we put food on a pedestal. And so how we talk about food and how we behave also influences what our children think about food. And so the most important thing that an adult can do is actually to model healthy eating behaviors with their kid. There's a breakfast that's balanced. Oh, it's snack time, a balanced snack. It's lunchtime. We eat all together. Oh, there might be something after lunch. Model the balance.
And I think that goes to my next question as well, feeds into my next question in terms of what's the best way to balance treats without creating guilt or fear around food, right? Because that happens very often as well, because it's either forbidden or it's just not allowed, it's bad for you, and then when the child does consume it, it's like, but you're giving it to me now. I thought this was bad for me, right? So I mean, you've spoken about it already, but please do share it again in terms of the balance.
So in the messaging that we give to children, if I make something bad, junk, trash, any judgmental word balanced with something like treat, reward, the emotive language we use around food can change our relationship with that food. And it's not like sweeties, like we want to have all foods fit, ideally, relationship. And to be honest, a lot of us were not raised in that environment.
Yeah.
A lot of parents now are trying to be super healthy and they're not giving kids added sugar and they're worried about the addictive properties of ultra processed food. And I want to remind parents that your child is growing up to live in an environment where there are ultra processed foods and there is takeaways and there are little foil packets full of things. If you don't teach your child to eat in that world and trust their bodies in that world, you are setting them up for discomfort as they leave home, where you are not going to be able to control every morsel that they eat. And so one of the most important lessons that we can teach our child is how much is too much. And parents often look at me like I am crazy when I say this, but let your child go to a birthday party and eat an uncomfortable amount of sweeties or biscuits, or maybe it's even at home, ice cream, whatever it is. If they say, "Can I have some more?" let them have some more. Say, "Are you sure? Like, that's your second one. Are you sure you want a third one? Okay, I trust you to trust your body." Let your child overeat. Not to the point, don't force them, don't make them gluttonous, but let your child know, oh, that is too much. Some kids will even vomit because they're learning the limits of their body.
Right.
And what we want a child to do is have these memories of, I remember when I ate too much and I didn't like it and it was too much, so that they can learn to gauge. And it might not be once, they might have to do it twice. So, like, we all learn differently, especially if you yourself have struggled with this. Let your child learn what too much is, because then you can go, "Remember when you ate too much cake and how terrible you felt?" And they go, "Yeah," because you are reminding them that they know. They have experimented and they know. So that you are raising a child who lives in an environment where they know what too much cake is, what too much chippies is, what too much whatever it is. And they can also tell when they've had enough. So that when it comes to holiday eating, yes, they know they can sprinkle a bit of this stuff around. It's not, "Oh, like, we never eat this." It's everyday food. They know that if they eat too much of it, oh, I've got a hair in my eye. They know that if they eat too much of it, they're going to feel uncomfortable. But the other thing about it is as well, we should not make monitoring their health their problem. My children, the one day, said to me, "Is this healthy?" And I was so saddened, because I do not talk to my children about foods that are healthy or unhealthy. I think we only started talking about it around the age of 5. The reason being, I am the grown-up. It is my adult job to manage the health of my child's diet. They do not need to worry about what is or isn't healthy. They want to work on honoring what they need. So they did then start talking about proteins. We would talk about a balanced diet. Are there veggies? Is there starchy food or produce, so that we could kind of build a balanced plate? But it is not up to my children to check that something is healthy. It is up to me.
Yes.
And so I don't think we should say to children, "Oh, that's unhealthy," because then again, we're building this dichotomy of something is better and less healthy. And if I enjoy eating the less healthy food, am I a bad kid? If I enjoy eating this bad food, what does that mean about me? When in actual fact, we live in a world with all kinds of food, and one healthy meal does not make you healthy, and one unhealthy meal does not make you unhealthy. It's all about balance, because bodies are amazing and resilient. And when we eat food, we digest them and our body uses them, whether it's a donut or a piece of broccoli.
Absolutely. I love that. I love the way, you're talking about allowing the child to establish self-control, to listen to their bodies, to understand what they're feeling, how it makes them feel, how it makes them react, uh, just whatever's going on there. Because like you said, I mean, we do it as well. We eat something that doesn't make us feel good. We remember it. It's it's a bad memory, and you'll stay away from that. So it's a great example to try to implement, and also, again, talking about that forbidden foods and understanding the terminology we use as adults and how we pass this on, because we lead by example, right? And they follow everything we say, everything we do, and the next minute is like, "Did that child just say that? Where did she learn that from?" It's just, but she heard it from somewhere. And talking about healthy and unhealthy, but rather, I like the way you are, explaining what goes into their plate and how to create a healthy plate. I mean, that is solid foundation that you're laying there.
Absolutely.
That's really great. That's really great. But let's move on to the next segment now, where we talk about nutrition and growth, right? And red flags that parents shouldn't miss. Because through all of this, trying to create an environment that is conducive to healthy eating for our children, but this needs attention too, right? Where we We want them to be growing. We want to ensure that they meet all their milestones and all of that. But even during the holidays, when everything feels upside down, there's this guilt as a parent, right? Where we constantly want to be monitoring, that oh, they're not eating enough, or they're overeating, or they should have been growing and they shouldn't be growing. And have I, it's the guilt. What have I put on their plate? It's trying to find that balance all the time. So what are the top red flags in toddler nutrition that parents shouldn't ignore?
Increasing fussiness and a
Mm-hmm.
decreasing number of foods. That is really, because to be honest, a lot of toddlers will go from eating a huge variety to
Mm-hmm.
developing body autonomy and wanting to eat like naked noodles and
Ah.
nothing else. But if that doesn't start growing again, you might be dealing with a child who has texture or tactile issues, which is not necessarily a problem if you're able to address it.
Mm.
Fights around food, you want your child to be able to trust their appetite and to eat enough. And
Okay.
so if food is starting to feel incredibly stressful, one of the main flags, we tend to track our child's growth
Mm-hmm.
much more when they are born. And then as they get older, we track it less. And so you might go, well, how am I meant to know if my kid is growing enough or not? Well, you have a cohort. If your child is going to a play group or a school, you have a cohort of
Mm.
similarly aged kids. And if your child was one of the taller ones and is suddenly not catching up quite as much, or you're actually noticing that they're getting thinner, then you might think, okay, something is going on here, and
Okay.
that's worth tracking
Right.
your child's growth. So in general, you've got a Road to Health card that
Yes.
tracks a channel that a child should be growing within.
Yeah.
In the first 6 months of life, we tend to settle into our channel. So
Mm-hmm.
where we're going to kind of grow our projected height, our projected weight band, and then we should be following that band. Now, if you're jumping up,
Mm-hmm.
that's a sign that for whatever reason your child is eating more than they need, or maybe in an imbalanced way. And also if they are staying stable, so instead of following their chart, they're actually staying stable,
Okay.
that can be a sign that they are not gaining weight at the rate that we want. Long-term undernutrition leads to stunting, shorter height than
Mm-hmm.
we're expecting, and we obviously don't want that.
Mm-hmm.
Short-term malnutrition is where a child loses weight and gets thin. So that's
Okay.
referred to as wasting. Stunting is a lot harder to see because your child can actually look well fed. They just
That's true.
aren't growing higher. And so there, regular tracking at least once a year to have a check in. If you can do twice a year,
Mm-hmm.
that's fine. But also as the parent who is connected and seeing their child, you know whether or not your child is growing. You know whether or not you're changing age range or
Mm.
not. And often it's the outliers that will get picked up. The child who is very small or the child who is very big.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're listening to what other parents are saying and you get a sense that you're just stagnating, that can also be a sign to go to the clinic, go to your doctor, go to your pediatrician, and just have a check-in,
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes there's stuff that we can't see that's impacting growth.
Okay. So when do we term it that the child is a picky eater? What is a picky eater?
I don't think there is a kind of big accepted definition of
Mm-hmm.
picky eating. Depending on who you ask, some people will say there's less than 20 foods that they eat,
Okay.
or they're very particular about brands. So a picky eater is someone who will refuse to eat foods if they aren't in a way that feels safe and acceptable to a child.
Okay.
Often there is a certain level of autonomy in this, but if you think that sometimes in the wonderful ways that our brains work, children are getting a lot of information, and they get a huge amount of information through their mouth and their fingers. And if you have a child
Okay.
who doesn't like getting dirty, you might find that the textures they don't like, smoother textures, saucier things, are just so much information for that little brain. It's
Okay.
hard for them to process. And so
Right.
that kind of fussiness around food might actually extend to other areas, like a child who doesn't like having mess on their face or mess on their hands and
Mm-hmm.
won't engage in messy play. So you can use that like very specific rigidity around tastes and textures as a sign that there might be other texture things going on. And it doesn't necessarily mean pathological.
Mm-hmm.
Often parents who were quite picky about eating dry foods or bland foods as kids will have children who exhibit the same patterns. And so sometimes that's where you'd actually get the insight of like, oh yeah, my mom said I was like this.
Uh-huh. So when it comes to picky eating, I mean, you want to let them be and allow them to explore and all of that. But then there's these concerns we're talking about, these red flags of, to what to watch out for in terms of milestones, etc. But how long is it okay to wait and see?
I actually don't know, but I am going to say that past a month to 3 months of a kid being really, really rigid and not making any concessions would be a worrying flag.
Mm,
When we present food, you can always ideally present a safe food, let's say naked noodles,
mm-hmm,
and then on the plate put a piece of fruit or a veggie and a little bit of
mm-hmm,
protein. You might find that a child who is over consuming dairy, so they're still getting most of their calories from milk, doesn't really feel hungry to eat any other food, and they might not see a need
mm,
to play with the squishy piece of carrot or the strawberry or apple.
mm,
And so there again, every individual child needs to be observed. If they're drinking a lot of juice, that can also happen.
right,
But generally, you want a child to be hungry when they get to their meals. So, regular meal structure, put down at least one safe food, and then put down some other balance. You want balance on the plate,
right.
and don't say anything. Put the food down. Don't say anything. Ideally, and this is not always possible with young kids, you will eat at the same time and you will eat a balanced meal.
Mm-hmm,
If your child asks for more safe food, I would say, sure. And then I would take a little while. And then I would come and put some more of the safe food back on.
okay,
And don't, even though there have been times where like you want to celebrate, you want to scream, you are so delighted they just tried a green bean, try not to react to it. The
okay,
child will increase their variety. And if you have a child who is a little bit hesitant, without forcing them, you can
right.
say, can you hear that? Is that pea making a noise? And you can interact and
Yeah,
play with the food. I find humor is so
yeah.
lovely because it reduces the pressure and the stress at meal times. So if you have a child who is picky, you can say, do you want to squash your peas? So they can feel it, because there
Mm,
is so much in getting to know the food before you actually put it to your mouth. You can smell it, you can touch it to
mm,
your face, you can listen to it. Just having the food on the plate is already decreasing the, like, you're making it less scary, you're having it close to the child. But do not, and there are people who suggest one polite bite or something like
mm,
that. If you have a particularly stubborn, strong willed child, you can potentially turn eating into a battleground if you insist on one polite bite or tasting it. If you have a child who will taste it, you can have a conversation about it and
mm-hmm.
use the biggest, most ridiculous language you can. This is minty. Ooh,
Ah,
this is smooth and creamy. How does it taste to you? That as that child gets to taste it, ideally they don't use the word yuck, because yuck is it's not very descriptive. You can say, is it the taste? Is it the texture? What part is yuck to you?
yeah.
Is it because it's chewy? Is it because it's slimy? Is it too sour? Do you find it tastes like medicine? It's too bitter. And then that child, in tasting the food and telling you how yuck and gross it is actually becoming better attuned to what this thing tastes like. And often blueberries or whatever fruit, vegetable, they're not made in factories, so they don't always taste the same.
That's
And that
true.
can also be overwhelming.
That is so true. That is so true. Now, let's move on to some practical strategies for the holidays, right? Even when the house is full of cousins and noises and treats and excitement, how can parents double down and implement some clear strategies that will just help them feel better about what they're feeding their children? So, for you, what's one simple strategy that makes holiday meal times easier?
Oh my gosh. I think planning goes a far way.
Mm-hmm.
If you know your plan, rough plan.
Yep.
Doesn't have to be that we're eating this, this, and this.
Yes.
But if you have a rough plan for yourself, try to feed your kids the same. Like, do we really have to make different meals for everyone? Depends on the household. But have a rough plan. Tell your kids the rough plan so that you're also setting realistic expectations for them across the day so that you're not getting asked about fun stuff at 9 a.m. They know that tonight we are doing XYZ and we're going to get some fun stuff there. And then the other thing that I think is helpful is to make sure you have healthy snacks available as well.
Yep.
So pre-prep some homemade popcorn, chop up a big chunk of watermelon so that if your kid goes, I'm hungry, you've got stuff that's ready to go, or you can even just put some out.
Yes.
Some parents will put out like a little snack box that if their kid does get unusually hungry in between meals, they can just go and get from the snack box. And in the snack box, there can be, depending on your child's age, ready peeled citrus fruit or little chopped up. Obviously, you want to make sure that you are chopping up fruits and veggies below the age of 4.
Right.
But whether there's some crackers or a little tub of yogurt or something like that, the kids can reach at a level that is easy for them. So this could even be the lower drawer in a fridge that they know they can open there and there's a little box and they can eat what they want in there.
Absolutely. And what's your number one hydration tip for toddlers in the summer?
Oh my gosh. Just have water in a bottle they love available. Some kids love icy water. You can add a drop, like you can add berries to it, or you can add something fun into the ice and make it with them. And you can ask them what flavor they want. But water, water, water. And don't wait for children to ask. Put the water out. So if your child drinks from a cup, make sure there's a cup in a place that they can reach that they know about. If your child has a bottle that they like, put it in a place that they can find. If they like a cold, make a cold. If they prefer it room temperature, make it room temperature. You can make the ice fun by adding stuff to it, but water is your primary hydration agent. I would definitely aim for water mostly, and just keep it really visible.
Okay. And if we're traveling, what do you think we should pack?
Oh, padkos is a whole thing.
I know, but give us some of your little tricks that you do with the kids, Kat. I'm sure you've done this.
I got the most unbelievable gift from a teacher. She gave us, it was almost like a fish tackling box, one of those flat ones, and it had rows of little compartments, and we filled these with a huge range of things, some fun, some more balanced. And so we had little compartments that had fruit in and veggies in and nuts in, and then there was also some of the fruity little sweetie type things, and there was some real sweets, and we filled that up. And we had like a 2-day drive, and we thought, let's see, I obviously had stuff to kind of top it up. And every child is different. My son ate, I think, every sweet thing he could and left the vegetables, and my daughter ate most of the vegetables and all the fruit and left some of the fun stuff. But I think having variety is important. I think having balance is important. And unfortunately, you do have to be prepared, because by the time your kids say, we're hungry, and you've got to pull over, you're not going to get the same stuff you would in your pantry at a garage.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Nats. That was a lot of information, and I'm sure she has a whole lot more up her sleeve. I know she does. I know you. Thank you so much. Your information and your advice is just so grounding and so practical.
Thank you.
I really, really appreciate that, and I think every parent needs those reminders of the obvious things that we simply neglect to look at. We overlook at some point. But these toddlers are resilient, and the holidays are it's just a smaller moment in the bigger picture, I suppose, right? I mean, that we have to get through. But those foundations that we've laid through the year can be followed through with lots of top-ups of entertainment in between.
Absolutely.
Right?
Entertainment snacks, fun snacks, absolutely.
Yeah. So, as a final question to you, what's the one thing you want parents to hold on to when it comes to toddler eating over the holidays? What would you say?
Oh, be patient.
Yeah.
Be patient. Have a gentle pattern. Feed yourself and your toddler similarly so that you're not planning literally double the amount of work in the day. And also set realistic expectations. Communicate openly with your children about what to expect so that it doesn't feel like a war.
That is so true. Yes. We want it to be fun. We all want to be on holiday. We all want to keep it relaxed.
And acknowledge that as well with your children. Don't say no, you can't have. Like, acknowledge, of course you want to eat the fun thing. Of course, this is when we're gonna have it.
Yeah. And it's going to be some wobblies in between, but that's okay. It's all part of the parenting journey.
Unfortunately.
Thank you, Nats.
Thank
And
you.
for those people that want to reach out to you, please just let us know again where they can find you if they want a personal consultation.
Yes, so my website is nataliemat.co.za. There is a WhatsApp button on there. You can just push and ask me some questions if you've got. And then I'm also not very active on Instagram at Informed Appetite, but you can absolutely message me there as well.
Wonderful. We'll leave that in the show notes for you so you can contact Nathalie directly and get some help over the holidays, or if not, in the new year. Thank you so much. So to everyone listening, we just wish you all the best over the festive season with your little one. Keep the joy, keep the connection, and drop the pressure. So remember, this episode isn't medical advice. It is for education and information only. So please reach out to your practitioner for specific concerns with your child. Thank you for tuning in to Lights Camera Baby. Don't forget to subscribe and share and follow Mama Magic for more expert-led advice and support. See you in the next episode.